Aloha and welcome to the Solar Coaster Live Show here with Doug McLeod, Chair, Hawaii Energy Conference. And we're discussing this notion with Henry Curtis of what is it we're not anticipating in our path to 100% renewables. How are you today, Doug?
I'm good. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, Henry and I were talking nowadays, if you're going to put two old white guys up on a stage, or in this case, up on a screen, they really better have something to say. And, we were thinking, what do we really need to talk about? And for me, the issue that I don't think we're talking enough about in the energy scene in Hawaii is what I call the bad actor factor. And that's the likelihood that someone really intends some mischief to the grid, actually intends some harm. We do have a tendency in Hawaii of talking about resilience, but it's really been focused on hurricanes, and partly because of the Iniki experience that we had. But I am just personally concerned that a number of the projects and technologies that we're talking about probably ought to be written off or changed just because of this risk. And a couple that really come to mind, all of the projects involving undersea cables. We don't really have a live project currently talking about power going between islands, but we do still have a number of people talking about offshore wind, particularly offshore floating wind. And if you just look around the world, it's common knowledge that, there are most navies with submarines have equipment that can cut cables. And this type of thing, we really aren't saying, hey, that's just too risky in terms of someone intending a bad action. We evaluate the risk from nature, tsunamis and the like, but we really aren't out there saying, hey, could someone really just take us out that quickly? So first one that comes to mind, definitely offshore wind. But I would also say this isn't a utility scale versus distributed thing. People that follow the nuclear energy industry, they're familiar with a facility in Iran called Natanz, and it's been the victim of several rounds of hacking in different ways, usually attributed to the Israelis. But in the last go round, what was sort of startling is that one of the fixes the Iranians had put in after the last go round was battery backup on site, as a way to kind of have controlled power. And in the latest hack, people were actually able to go in and take control of these batteries placed there for storage as well. So when I think that, and I see what's going on, I like, okay, here in our energy conference, we're excited to have Swell's CEO speak, and virtual power plants are an exciting technology. But, every time we say that the control for these distributed resources is going to be in a centralized location, again, we're creating that risk that someone gets in there and essentially takes control, or at least causes chaos. So that really does concern me. And again, it's not a distributed versus utility scale, because the model that Hawaiian Electric's been using in all these big procurements is dispatchable power, and that's their term. And it really, again, means that someone sitting in a room at a plant can control the output of batteries miles away. So I just keep asking myself, are we evaluating this risk of the bad actor factor? And I'm not convinced that we're giving it the weight that we should. So, when Henry and I were talking, that's the one that really stuck out to me.
Well, at the Public Utilities Commission, there's a great deal of emphasis on policy issues and on projects, but far less on the grid. And the Colonial Pipeline situation, I think, highlights the issue that a lot of infrastructure is vulnerable. Certainly, the Ukrainian grid was brought down. Israel and the United States screwed around with the Iran centrifuges. There have been a number of proofs that you can attack infrastructure. And Hawaii's grid is vulnerable, just like everybody else's grid, to a cyber attack. And Hawaii more so than most, because we have a great deal of variety on the grid. We have all kinds of different legacies. That is stuff that's very old, stuff that's new, stuff that's borrowed, and any vulnerability can occur anywhere. I attended a military cybersecurity and energy conference held during RIMPAC. It was held at the Hickam Officers Club in 2016. And the military was pointing out that a system is vulnerable from the weakest component on the grid. And as we put in more and more smart devices, as we put in more and more different kinds of systems onto our grid, the attack can come from anywhere, and we have to be prepared for that. Hawaiian Electric has hired hackers to try to attack their system, and the military in Hawaii has hired hackers to try to attack their system from the outside, and then to allow them access inside to see if they can do damage once they've penetrated the outer wall. So there is efforts underway, but these are highly secret or classified. But as we seek to reimagine what the grid will look like from both a cybersecurity and from a climate change threat, as we seek to deal with the coastal areas that can deal with flooding and deal with rain bombs and hurricanes, we need to begin thinking about how we design the grid that is environmentally, culturally, community-wise, and cybersecurity-wise a smart way to the future.
It's a remarkable concept, the notion that one could control not simply information flows or data flows, but actual IoT, Internet of Things, devices. And when you're talking about a garage door, okay, there's a certain level of threat. When you're talking about a lithium iron phosphate battery in your home, there's a certain level of threat, maybe less chance of thermal runaway. When you're talking about a cobalt battery with active cooling system, then you've got, I think I know what we're discussing here. We're talking about the potential for thermal runaway, or for potential for, explosion or fire, or real overt catastrophic consequences to someone hacking that dispatchable power, as you described it. And that's Doug McLeod, Chair, Hawaiian Energy Conference, with the bad actor factor, and Henry Curtis, Life of the Land. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for everything. Aloha.